Okay, so hi again. Here we go. This is the work class week 3. We're kind of wrapping up the Williamson stuff with this lecture, kind of pulling it all together, getting you ready to do that case homework, and really getting you ready for that midterm to do well in the midterm. So the last part of the Williamson stuff is the walking, some basic fundamental stuff with walking, not the in-depth kind of gait analysis that the physical therapists do, but just to kind of be aware how walking and standing in particular impact work-related injuries. So we're getting into sitting, standing, walking, kind of bringing it all together. Also going to look at body mechanics, idea of working from neutral, osteoporosis, and then kind of go in depth on child care, where there's just a ton of body mechanics issues and work-related injuries that we can help out with as OTs. Okay, so let's start with part 1. We're just going to do some review, and then we'll show our upper extremity, work case for the week. A couple of things to review. This is a couple of questions that always seem to give people a hard time on the midterm as we go through these lecture questions. Some of them are going to be coming back exactly word for word from the midterm. One is defined DNP, or dysfunctional movement pattern, and then how does improved kinesthetic awareness facilitate healing. And these are a couple of good definitions. It doesn't have to be this in depth, but you have to really get the essence of what these two things are about. Again, if you kind of understand it, you can kind of put it in your own words versus trying to just memorize something. DNP, a movement in which some muscles are overused and some are underused, or involves compensation, such as when walking with a limp. It's a great example of walking with a limp. There are some examples in the lab. Some of you had subtle DNPs in how you walked. One foot may have been out, knee may have been a little bit coming in a little too much. A lot of them were related to injuries. Some were not. It's just kind of the way you walked. And then there was DNPs we talked about when you're sitting, your jelly belly kind of thing, and your forward head. Most of us have forward head. Getting overworked, overused, those scalenes and elevators. How does kinesthetic awareness facilitate healing? By becoming more aware and relaxing certain muscles which are overused or overly strained, and engaging certain muscles which are underused to restore normal movement, flexibility, and proper body alignment. Example, lost awareness of the abs when sitting. You have poor kinesthetic awareness of that. So if you had more awareness, the transverse and oblique abs as well, really extending your trunk of your rhomboids. We talked about that to bring your scapula back, and your psoas and iliacus to get that natural curve and slight tilt and curve in your spine. So know those two terms well, because they more than likely may come back in the midterm, because they're a key part of what he talks about, this whole kind of concept. Okay, going back to the tilt. Keep going back to this tilt so everybody gets it. This is a kind of good graphic showing anterior and posterior tilt. On the left, this little red dot on top of his pelvis. I can show you, I remember you think about the bucket imagery, of a square like this. It's tilting with the arrow. It's tilting this way, tilting to the front of his body. Get this big kind of inverted C in there. That is a classic excessive anterior tilt. And then go in the other way. It's more posterior. You could argue this is more like a flat back. And a slight curve there, but it's kind of pretty straight, probably too straight, really. Not enough of a curve there. And then you got to move from recognizing whether it's an anterior or posterior tilt, and what are you going to do about it in terms of which exercises, explorations are you going to give your client to improve that, so it's not so excessive one way or the other, so they're not going to get all that back pain, so they can sit comfortably without getting in pain. All those things around posture. So you should recognize right off the bat, she has an excessive anterior tilt. Everything is just tilted this way, big C like that, excessive anterior tilt. And then he has the excessive posterior tilt. kind of tipping back the other way, flat back, posterior tilt. So with her, let's see, you get a picture, image of her on the midterm exam, and you think, okay, she has an anterior tilt, I can see that. How can I bring her more back into neutral? The muscles that we're trying to gauge here, the muscles that have poor kinesthetic awareness, she's not using them enough, they're just hanging out and not doing anything classically, are the abs. The rectus abs, not the transverse oblique so much, but the rectus abs. We can engage them more. It's going to push her back more to neutral, which is what we want. So we want to engage those rectus abs. What are exercises that we can do for that? Exercise 1, this is the first book. This is book 1. And book 1 is the newer book, Pain-Free Sitting, Standing, and Walking, with the Williamson book, book 1. And then the second book, book 2, is Muscular Retraining for Pain-Free Living, the older book, 1 through 5. They all work on that same thing, bringing our pelvis back to neutral. Another way to think about it, you may have done these exercises, these ab crunches, trying to get your belly to tuck in more. But it's, if you don't like it, everybody's very conscious of the stomach, so it doesn't, sag, to have that tight abs. These are the ones where you're laying on your back, you're pushing your stomach into the floor, kind of the abs crunch, and then pushing it into the floor, holding it there, and lifting your legs up. You've tried that one? That's a great one also. And all these other different ones, I won't go into them, but there are a lot of different Williamson ones. You have to know these versus just listing them, but you need to kind of start thinking this exercise for this problem. What we're trying to do, again, engage the rectus abs. And over here, the problem, again, is too much posterior tilt. We want more of this. We want it more this way. So you want to engage his hip flexors, the psoas and the iliacus in there. Give him that tilt, bring the tilt back. And those are the first ones we did. Those 1 through 4 explorations, they were kind of working towards more anterior tilt, more awareness, and engagement of these muscles. Okay, these are the learning objectives that we should answer today. And this is the case that we're going to kind of tackle today, start to look at. This is daycare worker Shelley, all kinds of pain in her wrist, her feet, low back, knees, and neck. She works over 40 hours a week. She cares for infants and preschoolers. Pain is recent, 6 months. The floors are even hard, tile floors. And she's sitting in these little child seats all day, which is really typical of a lot of daycares.